Jermichael Finley was a talented tight end and a colorful personality who came to the Packers in the third round of the 2008 NFL Draft out of Texas, a long way from Green Bay.
Oh man, it was a crazy ordeal. Coming from Texas and being a Texas boy, and then going to the University of Texas, which is a big city in Austin. I got that call from Ted Thompson and Mike McCarthy. I was like, Green Bay, Wisconsin? we going from hot to cold? And I got a phone call from a buddy. It was like, you better bring every Nintendo game you got, because it ain't nothing to do here but play football. I was like, this is the best town for me.
You came out of school early. I mean, you were young, right? You gave up your last 2 years of college eligibility.
Very young kid.
And tell me about your growing pains when you got here. What was the biggest thing about being in a pro team now suddenly compared to what you experienced?
It was very difficult, surrounding myself with men that already had a full-blown family, coming in as a kid, getting millions of dollars. It was very difficult, and especially getting the hype and the accolades and you know what I mean, coming into the stardom that the Green Bay Packers is as a franchise. It was very difficult.
I want to ask you about, let me take you back to one of the high points early in your career when you burst on the scene, when people outside of Texas started to know Jermichael Finley. You were the third leading receiver in 2009, but you had a breakout postseason game in the desert against the Cardinals. 6 receptions, a $159, franchise postseason record for receiving yardage. Tell me about that game against the Cardinals, the Packers and Cardinals playoff game that went to overtime before the Cardinals eventually won on a defensive play. But tell me about your day. What was it like?
It was awesome. It was just hitting the stride, too, during the course of that season. At the end of it, the 11th hour, and McCarthy came to my locker. He was like, big fella, we need you this game. So that hit me as a young kid. I'm like, let me tap into it. The head man came by my locker and took his time out before the pregame warm-ups, and you know what I mean, gave me some love, and it gave me just that strength to go out and play my hardest. And man, what a game that was! It was a big-time shootout, man. And I just done what I'm usually doing, and that's playing football. 2
Hall of Fame quarterbacks. Kurt Warner was on his way to the Hall of Fame, and Aaron Rodgers will eventually be there. But so you had an inclination that this could be a big day for you, right? I mean, you were in the game plan.
Absolutely. I'm a big visual guy, so when I went to bed at night, I try to visualize what I'm going to do the next day. And I tell my kid that now, which he's in high school and on varsity, but I'm like, visualize what you're going to do the next day. And visualize all these things and score, jumping over people. And so happened, I went out there and put that onto the field. And man, what a game that was.
I mean, offensively, it was incredible.
It was.
Was it one of those days where just everything clicked? You guys as a unit?
It did click, and the hard part about that is, and me being a tight end and a, you know what I mean, a alert and a decoy sometimes for the 6 guys that we did have touching the ball within Greg Jennings, the drivers, and James Jones. It was hard to get the ball. So when Aaron Rodgers threw me the ball, I had to seize the moment and take full advantage of it. So that's what I did that game.
Arguably, Finley was one of the most talented tight ends in the history of the Green Bay franchise, even though he played just 6 seasons for the Packers, catching 223 passes for 2,785 yards and 20 touchdowns. 2010, you guys come into the season with high hopes.
Yes, sir.
I'll never forget the welcome back luncheon here at Green Bay, all wearing cowboy hats.
It was big time.
It was really big. You guys were one of the favorites going into that season.
Yes, sir.
But it didn't work out quite as smoothly as everyone thought. Some close losses early and a lot of injuries, of which you were one.
Yes, sir.
Tell me about that. And as you watched that team evolve into a Super Bowl team without all you guys, what was that like?
It was big time, man. Not my injury, but the way the guys and the way McCarthy as a coach got the whole team together, and he put it all back together as far as the injuries. We had 19 injuries that year, like a lot of injuries, and just not. We had Nick Barnett was hurt that year, middle linebacker, and it was just one of those years where it was just our year. You know what I mean, with the injuries too. Also, I got hurt week 4 in Washington off of, You know what I mean? A routine play, and injuries is going to happen. It's just when it's going to happen.
You know, it's interesting, J. Mike, because you mentioned McCarthy, and I had learned some things in following that team. I've told people, and I tell them this to this day, that team does not win the Super Bowl without Mike McCarthy doing some of the things that he did, like what you just described, behind the scenes, to get that team over them. Because I think by midway through the season, with you and Barnett and 8 starters out, I honestly believe that team was starting to think, well, it's just not our year, right?
Season's over.
Season's kind of over, just not our year. But give me another example of what he did with you guys.
And the McCarthy, he was a guy, and he was a big game plan guy. You know what I mean? If you had an injury here or I was out here, he was always putting a game plan together where we would succeed. He's a big time classroom guy, and that's what I respect about McCarthy. You wouldn't sit in the X's and O's on the field or whatnot. It's when the doors are closed upstairs within the organization where McCarthy goes to work, and he's a hell of a game planner.
And he's also he kind of has a way of, like most great head coaches, of just nudging you the right way, saying the right thing, coming in, saying, patting you on the back, say, "We need you, big fella."
And that's the thing he's done really well. And I call him McCarthy and Mac Brown. They are player coaches where they come down at lunch and breakfast and just talk and just sit by you, have coffee. I remember he used to come in I used to come in a facility, and Mike McCarthy would say, "Big fella, I need to know what you're thinking today. Come upstairs and have some coffee." He was just that type of coach.
He's the kind of guy, I've told people this week a lot, McCarthy's the kind of guy you pull up, sit up next to in the bar and just talk. Maybe not even about football, you just talk. He's that kind of guy.
He is, and like I say, McCarthy was the guy in 2010 for us.
You had an interesting relationship with the quarterback. Tell me about that.
Man, it was, you know what I mean? I was that guy. I was very passionate. Really didn't mean any ill will, any flack about it. I was just that guy that really loved the game. And now that I look back in my back to my heyday, and I'm like, I couldn't shut my mouth. I mean, but at the end of the day, I love the game, and I worked so hard in the off season that it was just, it wasn't. I mean, that was just me. That was my personality, and that's what made me who I am.
To get on the same page, you and Aaron often would meet Saturday night on the road before the game. Tell us about those meetings.
Man, it was pretty awesome, because the thing about them meetings were they wasn't about football, and I loved that part. It was more about how you doing, how's your family, and I'll ask him, how are you doing, how are your family? So we would get off the field, and then at the 11th hour of the meeting, that's when we would go over steps. If he got 5 steps, I'm gonna take 3. You know what I mean? We'll go over the steps and whatnot. But he was an awesome guy, man. He's a big time leader, and today I love Aaron Rodgers. I can't wait to see him.
It sounds to me like a lot of leaders, in the moment, when you're learning and coming up, he's a demanding taskmaster, isn't he?
He is demanding. Very very smart human being, and that's what you got to expect with Aaron Rodgers. And when we played with the dynamic crew we had, when you went on the field with Aaron Rodgers, it's like going to calculus class. You gotta do math, and you gotta play football. So that was the difficult part with the McCarthy's, the scheme he had and the things he taught Aaron Rodgers. Because I don't think Aaron Rodgers would have been Aaron Rodgers without McCarthy. So, like I say, I think playing with Aaron Rodgers it's a difficult task.
Yeah, it's not easy. There's a lot of
demand there. It ain't easy.
There. You were coming into your own. You were having a nice career, and the Cleveland Browns game, Week 7, 2013. I saw the hit. It was describing the game, and it looked like any other hit, but you weren't getting up. And tell us about that moment in the Browns game where you got hit.
Oh yeah, I thought it was a routine play. Me and 12 connected on that play tons of times, and that play, it was just unfortunate that the safety came down. I mean, I bent, I tried to protect myself, and so happened I took that hit legitimately 100 times. And I took that hit, and right when I took that hit, I just went numb. The stadium went quiet, I couldn't hear the fans, and I'm like, holy crap, this is me this time. I done seen players get hurt tons of times and didn't get up. I'm like, nah, I'm that guy that prays for that guy. I'm like, looking up in the sky, I'm like, oh crap, this is me this time.
Wow.
And it was one of those feelings where I'm like, oh man, is my career over? Instantaneously, just like that. And that's why I go tell guys right now, when you walk in this locker room or any locker room around the National Football League, this is a blessing. You know what I mean? It's any given Sunday now. Everybody's getting bigger, faster, stronger.
A blessing that can be taken away at a moment's notice.
And that's what I experienced, where now I tell my kids, I got all boys, that's what's crazy, is that every time we step on the basketball court, football field, anything, seize the moment, take it all in, because this thing can be taken at any time.
Let me ask you, from a business standpoint, you had, I guess, were you coming up on an option year in your contract or whatever? You had somebody around you, or you, decided, we better insure this guy.
Yes, sir.
And you had a $10 million insurance policy.
Yes, sir.
But the policy stipulated that if you ever set foot on the football field again as a player, the policy was defunct. Tell me about that situation. And was it had to still be gut-wrenching to leave the game, even though you knew you had the financial security, but to leave the game, that desire, that will, doesn't care about money
at all.
It's you know what I mean? So it had to be hard.
It was very tough. At the time, my agent, Blake Barrett, my wife, Courtney, we sat in the room that year before we even started the season. And I saw myself, I looked at a couple film that I had previous year, before the year I got hurt. I was like, man, I'm playing reckless. You know what I mean? What can we do to put in place for this following year to protect myself? And so we started doing a lot of research, and we was looking at the Lords of London. And so I protected my ear, my fingers, my toe, my hand, my whole body basically. And so happened I had got a career-ending injury, and that was the top of the Lords of London amount that I can get. So I was like, take me through the roof in an amount. Give me the $10 million policy. And so happened that injury happened that year that I signed that policy. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Fortuitous, to say the least.
Whew, man, it was, I thought I was dreaming for a second. It didn't seem real. It didn't seem real at all.
But you still wanted to play, and you still checked out some opportunities, did you not?
I did. I went to the Seahawks with Schneider. And he was like, man, I know you. I know you can play. I know your desire. I know your work ethic. I know all the things you bring to the table. We're going to give you a shot. So I was like, hold on. Let me go get an x-ray and an MRI on my neck. And so I went to go do that, and I came back. I still had a bruise on my spinal cord. And I was on the treadmill, and Snyder was like, you're done. I was like, no, I'm not. So I went to the Pittsburgh Steelers and tried them out, and that was my doctor and Dr. Maroon. So you know the doctors, they have egos. It was like, I fixed your neck. Pittsburgh Steelers would love you here. So I went on my own and got my own MRI. I was like, I'm not healthy enough to play in the National Football League. So after that, I just called in and just took my policy.
Yeah. Wow. Still tough, huh?
Very tough. Very tough.
Today, Finley, wife Courtney, and 5 boys live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, where Jermichael started an organization called Elevate You, player development for kids aiming to make football and sports a career.